Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Kamal Joshi, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Environmental Science, Graphikira Hill University, Dehradun. In this lecture, I am discussing about the biodiversity conservation. In previous lectures, we have already discussed about the major threat to the biological diversity, like the value of biological diversity, and the basic introduction of the biological diversity. Now, the end of this topic, the biodiversity conservation, we will continue. Before starting of this topic, the conservation issues or the conservation practices of biological diversity, first we have to understand about the conservation meaning. The meaning of conservation, or the you can define the conservation is as like uh, to protect or save the things for future, or protect the things for their threats also. Means conservation means to conserve the things or the natural things they are available in nature, to conserve these natural things for the future or our future generation. So this one is the meaning of conservation. There are many practices, many techniques which are responsible to protect and to save these natural things or the natural resource or the biological diversity for our future. So let's discuss about the conservation methods. Here we can see these are the basic techniques or the conservation methods which is generally used to protect or conserve the biological diversity. So first one is the in situ conservation methods, second the ex situ conservation methods, and third one is the strict law and policies which comes under the Biological Diversity Act 2002. So in this lecture we will discuss separately the in situ conservation methods, ex situ, and try to understand the Biodiversity Act 2002. So the in situ conservation methods. The in situ conservation practices generally used to conserve the biological diversity or our biological resources in terms of the plants and the animals. So in situ conservation means to conserve the species inside their natural habitat. This one is the basic definition of in situ conservation method. The in situ conservation method, there are some examples which comes under the in situ conservation method. First one example is national parks. However, at present in India, 101 national parks has been established or notified. These national parks cover about 40,568 square kilometer area and about the 1.23% of total geographical area. As per the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972, Schedule Chapter 6, it has mentioned that Section 6 has been mentioned that the formation of national parks, basically the state governments have right to establish the national parks on the basis of rich biological diversity area in terms of plants as well as animals. So a national park is an area with enough ecological, geomorphological and natural significance with rich fauna and flora, which is designed to protect and to develop wildlife or its environment. Basically, the national parks is established for the conservation of flora and fauna part. National parks in India are IUCN Category 2 protected areas. In the national park, activities like the grazing, hunting, forestry or cultivation etc. are strictly prohibited. No human activity is permitted inside the national park except for the ones permitted by the Chief Wildlife Warden of the state. These are some characteristics which is followed in national parks. When you enter in the national park, then we have to these things in our mind, keep these things in our minds. Like basically we have discussed that the national parks is a part of in situ conservation method, and the national parks is established especially such area they are very rich in flora and faunal diversity. And if you know that the flora and fauna is a part of a healthy ecosystem, so it is mandatory to protect these things, flora and fauna. So for the protection of these in their own habitat, generally the government establish the national parks. So these are the some characteristics of the national parks. And generally national parks is divided in two parts, like the buffer zone and the transition zone also. Transition zone is the outside part, and this area is free. Transition zone is free for safari, for recreation activities with the permission of chief wildlife warden. And the buffer zone, the internal and center part of this of any national park, this one is strictly prohibited to enter freely. You can enter only for the research activities with permission of chief wildlife warden. So these are the basic you can say the characteristics of the national parks, especially in India. Second one, practices which is conducted in India for the conservation of biological diversity. These are the sanctuaries. So here I am giving a brief introduction about the sanctuaries. That at present in India about 553 sanctuaries has been established, and it cover about the 1,19,776 square kilometer area. It is about 3.64% of the total geographical area of India. So sanctuary is the second in situ conservation practices, and state government have a right to establish the sanctuary due to the value, due to calculate, estimate, or understand the ecological biological importance of that area. So for example, suppose in nearby your area, in which these area are very much famous for uh, plant or the animal species. So and their value is very high, means the rich in biological diversity. So the forest department can approach to establish this area as a sanctuary. So the here we can say that the any area other than area comprised with any reserve forest or territorial water can be notified by the state government to continue as a sanctuary if such area is of adequate ecological, faunal, floral, geomorphological nature or geological significance for the purpose of protecting, propagating, or developing wildlife or its environment. Basically, the meaning of this statement that a part of national parks, because the national park area is high as compared to the sanctuaries, if some small area they have significance value of their ecological significance value, or these small areas are rich in flora and fauna diversity. So if uh, these are ecological value, so we can protect this area under the sanctuary. So the formation of the sanctuary is also mentioned in the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972 in section 6 also, or section 6 also. At present, we have already discussed that the 553 existing wildlife sanctuary in India, which covered about the 1,19,776 square kilometer area, and it is about 3.64 percentage of the geographical area of the country. Next one, in situ conservation practices, which is conducting in India also. This one is biosphere reserve. Here you can see that the biosphere reserves in India it is about 18, And the biosphere reserves generally established sites. The biosphere reserves are sites established by the countries and recognized under the UNESCO Man and Biosphere programs to promote the sustainable development based on local community efforts and sound science. The program of Biosphere Reserve was initiated by UNESCO in 1971. So biosphere reserves, I would like to add some things in the biosphere reserve. In India, about the 18 biosphere reserves has been established. Generally, the biosphere reserves is established under the MAB program, which is recognized by the UNESCO. Such programs, the objective of this such programs to identify such area in the world, they are unique, or you can say they are such protected area or such area, they have a unique, or you can say the fresh or healthy ecosystem. Generally, the biosphere reserves is established to protect the entire ecosystem. Entire ecosystem means that if we are conserving not only the biological diversity in terms of plants and animal, but we are protecting the abiotic components of also. So this one is the main objective of the biosphere reserves, and these areas are generally established about 5,000 square kilometer areas. So the biosphere reserves area is too high, is much high as compared to the national parks and sanctuary. That's why its numbers are only 18 in India. The first biosphere reserves of the world was established in 1979. However, this uh, project, the biosphere reserve project, was initiated in 1971. So, in 1979, the first biosphere reserve was established in the world, and since then, network of biosphere reserves has increased to 631 till 119 countries across the world. The biosphere reserve is specially categorized categories to the protected area where human population is also form a part of the system. Generally, these areas is divided in three different categories or three different parts. The inner part is known as the core zone, and the middle part is known as the buffer zone, and the outer part of this biosphere reserve is known as the transition zone. However, transition zone is generally free for the blazers. They can move and they can establish in the transition zone, or some blazer also comes under this transition zone, and in this area they can establish their own kacha house. The buffer zone is the mid zone area. Here only this area is only free for the for educational tour as well as the research activity with permission of the chief wildlife warden. However, the central zone of which is mentioned here as a core zone is the inner part of biosphere reserve. This one is completely strictly prohibited for outsiders. So only the forest department officers they can enter, and other cannot enter. General person and the man cannot enter in the core zone. So these are the categorized on the basis of rules and regulations which is mentioned in Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So here we have already discussed about the national parks, sanctuaries and biosphere reserve. So here I would like to distinguish among these national parks, sanctuaries and biosphere reserves. However, the objective of these in situ conservation methods are same, to protect the biological diversity, but on the basis of their rule and regulations and their criteria and their area, they are different. So first, the national parks is generally established for the protection of only the animal species. So animal species, if any area where the some animal species are very are comes under the endangered and threatened or the rare category, so the national park can establish in these areas. The first one is the objective to establish a national park is this. These second, the area of national parks is is large as compared to the sanctuary. Generally, the sanctuary is established for the conservation of animal or plant or both the species and flora and fauna also. Means sanctuary is established in a small area as compared to the national parks. So that's why the number is high as compared to the national parks. However, uh, the biosphere reserves generally it is established for the conservation of entire ecosystem. Means if you want, if we have a good rich biological diversity in some areas and they have a good environmental conditions like the abiotic component also, so under this program MAB we can establish, the government can approach, can recommend this area as a biosphere reserves. Second, the difference among this biosphere with this national parks and sanctuary, biosphere is established. The area of biosphere reserves is high as compared to the national parks and sanctuary. That's why the number are 18 in India also. So these are the different and these are the in situ conservation practices which I have mentioned here. Now we come at the ex situ conservation methods. The meaning of ex situ conservation method is to conserve the species outside their habitat. This one is the ex situ conservation species. For example, suppose if animal have comes under the threatened in nearby area or forest area or some another way, we found that the habitat of any particular species or the elephant have completely vanished and we want to protect this species. So we have another option which comes under the ex situ conservation method. So we can protect, we can conserve this elephant outside their habitat. So this one is the ex situ conservation method, and some example of these methods are zoo, botanical garden, geological garden, gene pools, pollen seeds, and tissue culture and DNA banks also. These are the examples of ex situ conservation practices. So here I would discuss one by one of some examples like the seed banks, seed gene banks. These are generally the cold storage where we kept the genes, particular seed which are comes under the rare and threatened category. So we can store their seed genes, their germplasm, as at a low temperature, and we can generate a new species to get a new habitat or the suitable habitat of that particular species. So generally gene bank is established for such species. They are vanishing very rapidly and their habitat are vanishing very rapidly. So the scientists have designed the gene bank, seed gene bank, where we can keep the seeds and germplasm of the particular species for the long time, and we can develop, or in favorable condition we can develop a new species or that species for the new habitat. Second one is the gene bank. Here again it is a bank where we can where we can keep the genes for a particular species at the cold storage in a very low temperature. So and to get a favorable condition we can again design the species also. So these are the gene bank. And next one, another ex situ conservation practice is which comes under this one is the animal translocation. The meaning of animal translocation, for example, like suppose a particular habitat is of animal is completely vanished, so we can translocate this animal to one place to another place. For example, suppose Indian forest are for complete forest are vanished due to the forest fire, and the elephant species, they are facing some threats in northern region of India. So we can translocate this animal to north to south also. We can send it to the Kerala area also. So this one is the translocation, the meaning of translocation. So sometimes this activities is conduct to increase the population and to provide the suitable habitat of the particular species which are facing some critical conditions for their surviving. So some translocation is carried out by the following cases. When a species on which an animal is depend become rare, so sometimes their population are declining very rapidly, तो वो रेयर कंडीशन में आ सकते हैं. सो टू रिमूव दिस सिचुएशन वी कैन ट्रांसलोकेट द पर्टिकुलर स्पीसीज फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर प्लेस ऑल्सो. When a species is endemic or the restricted to a particular area, so we can translocate this species also. And due to habit destruction, habitat destruction and the unfavorable environmental condition, sometimes we face this situation like the global warming also, so we can translocate the animal from one place to another place also, and increasing in a population in that area. So sometimes some population, some animal population, they increase very rapidly, so we can shift this animal to one place to another place where the population is declining or their population is low, so we can shift this animal from one place to another place. So this one is the part of active conservation practices, because in this practice we are conserving the animal outside their habitat. Same as the botanical garden. Generally botanical garden is established for the flower plants, for the plants and vegetation also. Here we can growth some flowering plants, fruit plants also, some vegetable also. Nowadays we are using some exotic plants. We are cultivating, we are planting some exotic plants in the botanical garden also for the research activity and the education purposes also. Same like the botanical garden is the arboretum. Generally arboretum is established for the protection of the medicinal plants also. For in your garden also you can establish your own arboretum. If you have some medicinal plant species, you can cultivate it and you can protect this species in your own arboretum. So these are the practices which are used in ex situ conservation methods. Here some advantages of the ex situ preservation or the conservation practices. It is useful to decline the population of species. So this one is the advantage of the ex situ conservation practices. Endangered animal on the verge to extinction are successfully breeded. The threatened species are breeded in captive and then released in the natural habitat also. And it is extremely useful for conducting research and scientific work on different species also. So these are the some benefits. That's why we are using this ex situ conservation practices, and their outputs is mentioning in the research and in the form of research papers, as well as useful for the society also. Here I would like to share something for the ex situ conservation practices. Here you can see that the artificial platform which is provided for the conservation of sparrow as well as the Indian magpie robin also. So these are the artificial platform, means the artificial nest box. So these nest box provide a special platform for the declining number of sparrows. So these platforms are adopted by the sparrow and they increase their population here. So these are the ex situ conservation practices which are using for the protection of species. So this one is a practical issues. Now here I would like to mention here. Second one is the education awareness programs and awareness with the citizen science. You know that without the citizen science are such people, they are working indirectly or directly for the conservation of their biological diversity. So these pupils are comes known as a citizen science. So to aware such pupils to protect this species, so this one is the another practices which are also responsible for the protection of, for the conservation of biological diversity instead of ex-situ and ex-situ conservation, in situ and the ex-situ conservation practices also. Next one, the practices which is conducting in India. This one is Biological Diversity Act. This act was introduced in 2002 for the basic objective of this act to conserve the biological diversity. However, the Indian Wildlife Protection Act generally for the especially establish or focus on the conservation of wildlife also. Here, the Biological Diversity Act, because in the decade of uh, to keep the value of biological diversity in terms of plants and animals, so the act was established in 2002. So the Biodiversity Act is functioning just like three-tier system. Here you can see that they are functioning on the three level. First one is the national level, second one is state level, and third one is local level. So national level function is known as the NBA, means the National Biodiversity Authority, and state SBB it's functioning at the state level, and the meaning of SBB is the State Biodiversity Board, and third one is functioning at the local level. Local levels, this one is known as the biodiversity monitoring committees. So NBA is referred to the National Biodiversity Authority and deal with the national issues. National issues, like suppose if you have any good knowledge about a particular plant and you know that how to extract the medicine with this plant, and this medicine is very much helpful to procure a particular disease. So this one is your own knowledge, is your this one is your indigenous knowledge, whatever is your knowledge, your medicine knowledge, your knowledge. So this knowledge can be registered as your intellectual property right. So now, so such types of issues is deals with the NBA. For suppose you have a knowledge about the particular medicine plants or medicines, so you can file intellectual property right to the NBA and go through the NBA. The head office of the NBA is Chennai, so you can go through and you can file. For example, in some other works like the knowledge associated, suppose some person they are working, they are taking interest to research on biological field, bioresource field. So these resource, suppose you get some new things from biodiversity resource. So these knowledge transfer to this knowledge to the society, then utilization of this knowledge, and their result should be transferred from in different state as well as in abroad also. So these activities are directly related to the NBA. NBA deals with these things also. Got it? And next one is the SBB. It is referred to the State Biodiversity Board, and obviously NBA is functioning like the central level, and the State Biodiversity Board is functioning at the state level also. Just like our government of India, the central level, and the state government at the central level also. So state government have a right that especially established for the protection and the conservation of biological diversity, and state biodiversity board, it collects the complete bioresources which these are present available in this in particular state. So they have they have data bank, they have available knowledge about the complete bioresources which are available in their state also. So you can use this resource for the economical point of view, as well as we can spread their knowledge also through this state biodiversity board also. Suppose if you are staying in the Uttarakhand and you have again I'm saying that you have a good knowledge, state level knowledge on support bioresource, so you can discuss with the state biodiversity board, you can share your knowledge with the state biodiversity board, and you can get a certificate and registration with the particular knowledge at the state biodiversity board, and this state biodiversity board will send this knowledge to the NBA, and then if your knowledge of or the particular knowledge of medicine knowledge, etc. also, then you can get some reward and award also. So this one is deals with the state biodiversity board. Next one is the BMCs. BMCs is the biodiversity monitoring committees. Generally, it is established at the local level. For example, suppose a village. A village is established nearby the Rajaji National Parks. So these villagers, they know ki what types of species are available in this Rajaji National Park, because they are interact with these species daily basis during the collection of dry roots, shoots, and fuel, fodder, etc. So, for example, in Van Gujars also, they know ki what types of animal species they are present available in that area. So these persons are comes under the BMCs. So every villages they can mention their PBR. PBR is the Pupil Biodiversity Register. In this register, this pupil mentioned all complete knowledge with the figure also, with their hand drawing also, and the BMC may charge for any person to collecting any biological resources and the commercial purpose also. Means it means the BMC जो है ये इस सारे रिसोर्स को जो आपने कलेक्ट किया इस विलेज के, वो लोग हैं इसके अंदर, वो मेंबर होते हैं जिनको इस तरह की नॉलेज होती है, एंड दीज मेंबर दे कलेक्ट दिस इंफॉर्मेशन इन द PBR, एंड दीज फॉर मेंटेनिंग ऑफ दिस एवरीथिंग द BMC मेंबर्स दे कुछ उनको चार्ज दे कलेक्ट, वो फीस कलेक्ट करते हैं, उनको कुछ कंट्रीब्यूशन उसमें करते हैं, और ये नॉलेज फिर जो है स्टेट बायोडाइवर्सिटी बोर्ड को दी जाती है. देन द स्टेट बायोडाइवर्सिटी बोर्ड फॉर दिस एक्टिविटी दे प्रोवाइड सम रिवॉर्ड एंड अवार्ड ऑल्सो इन द BMC मेंबर्स. ठीक है, जिस विलेज की BMC बहुत अच्छी होती है, दे प्रोवाइड सम एक्स्ट्रा अवार्ड्स एंड रिवॉर्ड्स टू द पर्टिकुलर विलेज ऑल्सो. So the PBR किस तरह से बनता है? Formation of the PBR it is mentioned here. So the first step is the formation of biodiversity management committee. So सबसे पहले किसी गांव में एक BMC हमें establish करनी पड़ेगी. Then second one is the provide knowledge about the study, survey and possible management to the BMC's members. BMC के member को सब चीज़ का knowledge उनको होना चाहिए, वही member बनते हैं जिनको इन सब का knowledge होता है. They have a good educated basic knowledge, they have a local knowledge, they have good knowledge, and they are very good like to survey here and there, and they have good knowledge about the management also. So वो सारे members का वहाँ registration होता है, then उनको training दी जाती है by the forest departments, and they collect the complete traditional knowledge as well as available knowledge in that particular area in the form of data collection किया जाता है. Then उसमें दे टेक अ पर्सनल इंटरव्यू विद द लोकल पर्सनस. वही BMC मेंबर्स गांव वालों से, अदर लोगों से मेंबर इंटरव्यू लेते हैं, एंड दे कलेक्ट द कंप्लीट डेटा बैंक ऑफ दैट एरिया. एंड आफ्टर कलेक्टिंग दिस डेटा उसको एनालिसिस किया जाता है, एंड आफ्टर एनालिसिस एक रिपोर्ट रजिस्टर तैयार किया जाता है, जिसके बेसिस पे द इंफॉर्मेशन जो है उस बायोलॉजिकल डायवर्सिटी, उस एरिया की जो बायोलॉजिकल डायवर्सिटी की कंप्लीट इंफॉर्मेशन जो है वो वहाँ पे उस रजिस्टर में मेंशन होती है. सो दीज आर द एक्टिविटीज़ विच इज़ कंडक्टेड बाय द गवर्नमेंट अंडर दिस बायोडायवर्सिटी एक्ट टू कंजर्व द बायोलॉजिकल डायवर्सिटी ऑल्सो. At last, here I would like share some model which is using at the national level to manage, to control and to conserve the biological diversity. It is a very clear-cut flow chart which indicate that which start from the National Biodiversity Fund. So every year the government decides some fund for the for every year they provide some fund, and some part of this fund is comes under this National Biodiversity Fund. The basic objective of this fund is to protect the biological diversity, to conserve the biological diversity. So this fund is distributed under this section. First one is the in situ and ex situ conservation practices. So to establish the department person to establish the ex situ conservation practices or the in situ conservation practices, so some fund is utilized in the in situ and ex situ conservation practices to establish the zoo, a botanical garden, arboretum also, gene bank also, तो वहाँ पे वो पैसा लगता है. इसके अलावा this fund is also used to reward to the indigenous communities. So some communities, such community, they have some good knowledge, some indigenous knowledge. So and they share this knowledge to the government in the written form. So ऐसे लोगों को कुछ इस नेशनल बायोडाइवर्सिटी फंड से कुछ पैसा दिया जाता है, तो उनके इनको रिवार्ड कहा जाता है, नॉलेज को शेयर करने का रिवार्ड एंड अवार्ड उनको दिया जाता है. सो नाउ हमारे पास एक कंप्लीट इंफॉर्मेशन आती है, एंड दिस इंफॉर्मेशन इज मेंशन इन द फॉर्म ऑफ PBR, पब्लिक बायोडाइवर्सिटी रजिस्टर के फॉर्म में अवेलेबल होती है, एंड द बायोडाइवर्सिटी मॉनिटरिंग एंड द कंजर्वेशन. नाउ एक जगह पे सारा डेटा अवेलेबल हो जाता है, एंड ये स्टेट लेवल पे हम बात कर रहे हैं, स्टेट लेवल पे अवेलेबल होता है. नाउ दिस इंफॉर्मेशन इज सेंड टू द नेशनल बायोडाइवर्सिटी अथॉरिटी, उनको भेजी जाती है. नाउ अब हमें हर एक स्टेट का लोकल विलेज लेवल तक का हमारे पास सारा डेटा जो NBA के पास पहुंच जाता है, नेशनल बायोडाइवर्सिटी अथॉरिटी और नेशनल डेटा बैंक पे हमारे पास अवेलेबल हो जाता है. नाउ this data is distributed for the development aspect. This data is distributed to the industry. Suppose some industry are interested to establish their plant in Uttarakhand also. So first we have to knowledge about what type of plant species or resources are available, so the industry can easily establish there ना. So इस तरह से वो information industry को दी जाती है, research and development में दी जाती है, and the multinational corporation companies को दी जाती है कि जब हमारे पास डेटा अवेलेबल रहेगा तब वो उस जगह पे जाकर के उनको स्टैब्लिश कर सकती हैं, कंपनीज को रिसर्च एक्टिविटीज की जा सकती है. सो रिसोर्स का यूज़ कंट्री के डेवलपमेंट के लिए इंडस्ट्रीज करेंगी, R&D एक्टिविटीज़ करेंगी, मल्टी नेशनल कॉर्पोरेशन करेंगी, बदले में दे विल प्रोवाइड सम फंड, एंड दिस फंड इज यूज टू रिचार्ज द नेशनल बायोडाइवर्सिटी फंड. तो ये फंड सीधा नेशनल बायोडाइवर्सिटी फंड में चला जाता है. तो फंड का इस्तेमाल भी होता है टू कलेक्ट द कंजर्वेशन ऑफ बायोलॉजिकल डाइवर्सिटी. देन हमारे पास बायो रिसोर्सेज हैं, उन रिसोर्सेज का यूटिलाइज भी करना है, क्योंकि ये नेचर की पॉलिसी है कि यूज़ द नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज ऑल्सो. तो हमें उसको यूज़ भी करना है और सारा फंड भी वो रिचार्ज हो जाता है. तो इस तरीके से दिस वन इज द मॉडल विच वन इज यूज फॉर द सस्टेनेबल यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ द बायोलॉजिकल डाइवर्सिटी एंड द कंजर्वेशन ऑल्सो. नाउ थैंक यू वेरी मच टू ऑल ऑफ यू for your attention.